You are tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. Something deeper. The kind that comes from being available to everyone, for everything, for too long. The kind that comes from constantly performing the version of yourself that other people need you to be. The kind that comes from forgetting somewhere along the way who you actually are. You do not need more productivity. You do not need more discipline. You do not need another strategy for optimizing your life. You need to disappear for a while. And Carl Jung, the man who spent 50 years mapping the human interior, would tell you the same thing. Most people think disappearing is weakness, running away, giving up. The world will tell you to push through, stay visible, keep showing up, never stop. But here is what Jung actually found. In decades of clinical practice, the people who never withdrew, who never retreated into genuine solitude, were not stronger. They were hollower, performing a life rather than living one. And the people who periodically disappeared, who gave themselves the silence required to hear themselves again, came back different. Not just rested, rebuilt. In the next 10 minutes, I am going to show you exactly what Jung discovered about the psychology of withdrawal. Why disappearing is not retreat. Why solitude is not loneliness. And what actually happens to you when you finally give yourself the silence you have been denying yourself for far too long. Jung called it the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming fully yourself, not the self that was shaped by other people's expectations, not the self that emerged from accommodating everyone around you. Your actual self, the one that exists beneath every performance, and every role, and every version of yourself you have deployed to make other people comfortable. And he found that this journey cannot happen in noise. It cannot happen in constant availability. It cannot happen while you are managing other people's perceptions of you. It only happens in one place. Silence. Real silence. The kind you have been postponing indefinitely. Because something always comes first. Here is the signal that you need to disappear. You are reacting more than you are responding. Things that should not affect you are affecting you. Small things. A comment from someone who should not have access to your interior. A shift in someone's tone that somehow determines the quality of your day. A moment of being overlooked that replays for hours, longer than it should. This is not weakness. This is depletion. And the depleted self cannot protect its own boundaries, cannot hold its own standard, cannot access the clarity that it was capable of before it was emptied by too much external noise and too little internal restoration. Jung wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. You cannot look inside while you are constantly looking out at the phone, at the reaction, at whether the world is approving of you today. The withdrawal is not about them. It is about giving yourself back to yourself. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude that most people never fully understand. Loneliness is the pain of being without the connection you need. Solitude is the practice of being with yourself so completely and so honestly that external connection becomes something you choose rather than something you desperately require. The person who is lonely, when alone, has not yet met themselves deeply enough to find the company there. The person who is restored by solitude has done that meeting, has sat with themselves in the quiet, has asked the questions that can only be heard when nothing else is making noise. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I actually want? What have I been agreeing to that I have not consciously chosen? What have I been carrying that was never mine to carry? These questions cannot be heard in the noise. They can only be heard in the disappearing. Jung believed that the shadow, the parts of yourself you have refused to acknowledge, grows louder in solitude. And that this is not a problem. It is the point. Because what you avoid in the noise follows you into the quiet. And in the quiet, it finally has your attention. The anger you have been managing, the grief you have been postponing, the need you have been too proud to acknowledge, the fear you have been performing your way around. All of it. Waiting. In the silence. Not to destroy you. To be seen. And the extraordinary thing, Jung observed again and again, was this. The material that felt most threatening in avoidance became most liberating in acknowledgement. The wound you refused to look at was not destroying you because it was there. It was exhausting you because of how much energy you were spending not looking at it. The disappearing is not just rest. It is the permission you finally give yourself to see what you have been carrying and to put some of it down. Here is what happens when you actually disappear. For a while, the first few days are uncomfortable. Your nervous system is accustomed to noise, to input, to the continuous flow of other people's energy, organizing your attention. When that stops, the restlessness begins. The urge to check, to reach out, to fill the silence with anything that prevents you from being alone with yourself. This urge is the beginning of the work. Not something to escape, something to sit with. Because on the other side of that restlessness, once the nervous system begins to settle, something else emerges. Clarity. Not forced clarity. Not the clarity of deciding what to do next. The quiet clarity of remembering who you are. What matters to you. What you actually believe. What you actually want from the life you are living. Jung described this emergence as the recovery of the self, with a capital S. Not the performed self. Not the accommodating self. The deep original self. That was present before. All the roles were assigned. And all the performances began. And once you have reconnected with that self, even briefly, everything changes. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But the decisions you make from a reconnected self are different from the decisions you make from a depleted one. The people you allow into your energy are different. The things you say yes to are different. The things you say no to, without guilt or lengthy explanation, are different. You come back from the disappearing with something you cannot manufacture through any other method. Yourself. Restored. Clarified. Ready. Marcus Aurelius did this every single morning. Before the empire could reach him. Before the demands arrived. Before any person or situation could organize his interior around their needs. He retreated into writing, into reflection, into the private space of a man who understood that the only way to give genuinely to the world was to return first to himself, not as indulgence, as discipline, the most demanding discipline available. Being present with yourself, honestly, without performance, without the management of how you appear, even to yourself. Just you, in the dark, in the quiet, finding what remains. When everything external is temporarily removed, that is the work of the disappearing. And it is the most important work you will ever do. You do not disappear because you are giving up. You disappear because you are choosing to come back as yourself, not as the depleted version that has been running on noise and obligation. The real version, the one that knows what it stands for, the one that does not need constant external input to feel certain of its own worth, the one that is genuinely present when it returns. Give yourself the silence. It is not irresponsible. It is the most responsible thing you can do for every relationship and every commitment in your life, because the version of you that comes back from the quiet is worth infinitely more to everyone around you than the depleted version that never left. If this gave you permission for something you have been postponing, subscribe. This channel is for people building quiet power, one honest conversation at a time. Drop this in the comments if you needed to hear this today. I am allowed to disappear